Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about what you should be looking for when you buy a used bass boat and kind of how that process should go for you. I'm James and this is Clearwater Fishing. I do fishing vlogs, I do how-tos, I do boat maintenance videos, I do reviews, and anything else fishing related. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell and you'll be well on your way to catching more fish. But what should you be looking for when you're looking to buy a used bass boat? It's getting to that time of year where the boat market is becoming a buyer's market. And I'm talking from about September to January is definitely the time of year you want to be looking to buy a bass boat. Now, the reason for this is there's not a whole lot of demand for boats during this time frame. You got the people who didn't use their boat this year and they're thinking, man, I'm just going to sell this thing and get some holiday cash so we can do some other stuff. I'm going to show you a few things to look for to help negotiate that price down. And I'm also going to show you a few things that if you find, you should probably rent away. Before you go look at a boat, there's a few pieces of information that you should have. First is that you should know kind of what boats in this range of years and models and that kind of thing cost. If they're over or underpriced by a lot, this could be a red flag. They may have specific reasons to why it's priced that way, so you definitely want to communicate with the owner as to why the price is so high or so low. If possible, you want to know the number of hours on the engine. If you can't get the number of hours, I would recommend doing a compression test on that engine. There's plenty of YouTube videos on how to do that. So make sure that you have the owner's permission to do that when you do go look at it. But I highly recommend having the number of hours handy just so that you can help negotiate price, or if it's too many hours, you can run away from the boat. Personally, if I'm looking to spend a huge chunk of money on a boat, I consider, pretty new, under 300 hours, used from like 300 to 1,000 hours, and anything above 1,000 hours, I'm going to really start to question the integrity of that motor and how many hours it's going to have left. Pictures speak 1,000 words. So every picture that you can find of that particular boat, inspect it very closely. And if things aren't very clear or if they bring up questions, make sure you take notes on those. And you can ask the owner about them, if they're deal breaker type questions. I would definitely ask them, in the email or text or even on the phone call that you have with them. If they're just kind of questions that, hey, I'm not very clear whether or not it comes with both seats or something like that, you can ask that when you get there. If the boat passes your visual test, I'll give you the green light to go communicate with the owner. I don't recommend doing any negotiation until you see the boat firsthand, because you may go ahead and put yourself at a disadvantage if you've already negotiated. So the next part is all about looking at the boat and what you should look for. So let's go out to my boat and I'll point out a few things that you should be looking at. When you finally get to look at the boat with the owner, make sure you're very polite to the owner, but don't let the owner rush you while you're checking things out. If he does, pretend like you're not interested anymore and then just leave. There's no sense in for the owner to rush you to make sure that you're getting a good buy. When you do finally get to meet the owner, you may want to ask him, hey, can we take this thing for a test run? Or at the very least, hear it run on the ears. In some cases, it doesn't make sense to take it out on the water, like if it's really cold outside, if it's in the 20s or something, or if you live further up north and the lakes are iced over. It just doesn't make sense. But if the owner doesn't let you run it at all, I would be kind of wary of your purchase or your potential purchase, because you don't even know if the thing runs. Everything he could be telling you at that point, you have no faith in or no confidence in, because you have no checks and balances. If he says, hey, the fish finder works, and you check out the fish finder and it works, okay, now we're starting to build some trust between one another. But assuming the owner lets you take it on a test run, or even let it run on the ears, I got a list of things that you should check. The first being the trim switches. Typically, most bass boats have three. One here at the helm. Sometimes it's here on the shift select. Sometimes it is at the wheel. You have the one at the helm, and then you typically have one on the engine itself. and then one at the bow so you can trim your motor up and down while you're fishing. While you're checking the trim switches, you want to make sure the motor can go all the way up and all the way down. If it doesn't do this, the trim has some issues, and at this point I might be wary of purchasing the boat unless you're really good at working on hydraulic systems. While we're still up here at the helm, you might want to check the steering. Do a full turn to the left and a full turn to the right, and make sure that there's not any catches or hitches or any spots where the steering just flat out hangs up. If you do, still be wary of your purchase or potential purchase. There might be other issues going on as well, and be prepared to buy a whole new steering system. When you're done checking kind of the simple stuff up front and the switches and stuff like that, you kind of want to move to where used boats have about 50 to 75% of their cost, the engine. So if he lets you run it outside of the water, it's real easy to see if your prop or the shaft here is bent. You'll see it wobbling pretty bad. If that's the case, I would walk away from the boat. It's probably not worth fighting with trying to get a new foot or trying to get a new shaft and all that stuff to work. Definitely, unless you really know what you're doing and you have some experience behind that, I wouldn't go down that path. Inspect your skeg, see if it's broken, cracked, has a lot of wear. It might mean that, hey, this guy's been hit on some rocks before. Inspect that. While we're back here, you want to check your gear lube. It's very important that you check the gear lube. Definitely ask the owner before you do so. But what you're going to do is just take out this bottom screw here. It's not going to leak out a whole lot because you still have the top ones closed up, but you want to look at the color of it. Or if it hasn't been run recently, what you're going to see is just water. So if you have water rushing out of it, the motor hasn't been run very recently, regardless of what he tells you. If it's milky, well, that's also a problem. So if it's milky or have water in it, I would definitely not consider the boat because the seals somewhere in the foot have gone bad. Also, while you're down here looking at some things, turn and ask the owner, hey, when was the last time this water pump was changed? And if he can't remember or if it's been more than 3 years, definitely use that as a negotiating point. Water pumps are not that hard to replace. Definitely use that as a negotiation tactic, a few $100. It should be pretty good for that. After you check kind of the bottom area of the engine, the foot, the gear lube, and all that kind of stuff, come up to the top, remove the cowling, and kind of inspect the general cleanliness and the general condition of all the wires. If there's lots of wires that show a lot of age, or if there's lots of grease, oil, and other things like that kind of everywhere, the engine's had probably some issues, some work done to it. If you have any experience doing this is probably the time you probably want to do the compression test with remove the spark plugs and do all that kind of stuff. If you don't have that kind of experience, don't do it. If you never worked on engines or anything like that before, definitely don't do that. Just trust the hours the way they are. So the engine is the area you want to be the most strategic on. If you don't feel comfortable with the way something is on the engine, I typically would not consider using it as a negotiation tactic. You don't want to buy a dud, and this is, like I said earlier, where 50 to 75% of the cost of a boat is. So they're not easy to replace, they're not, even inexpensive to replace or work on or anything. So this is the one part you want to get right. You can always buy new fish finders, new batteries, new switches, and that kind of thing. If you're comfortable with the way the engine looks, runs, feels, and you have a pretty good feel of the condition, and you want to move forward, the hull would be the next thing I start looking at to see if I could find any issues with. You want to be looking for like chips, cracks, especially in the transom. You don't want any chips or cracks in the transom. For aluminum boats, you want to be looking for cracks in the welds. I'll point one out here in a second. There's not a crack on this one, but I'll point out some welds. And on fiberglass boats, you're going to be looking for cracks or maybe even a weak transom. Don't be afraid to grab the engine, give it a shake. If you feel any give or any weird sounds, definitely walk away, because transoms are not easily fixed either. So I just wanted to point out a couple kind of welds here. This is a support bracket for the transom. So you might want to inspect around here, see if there's any cracks in the welds, check the transoms welds out as well. See if you can find any issues here, any give points, or any potential issues that may have down the road. So if the hole looks good, you want to start checking some of the extras. So some of the extras you may want to look at is the trolling motor. Look at the actual motor itself and see if it's just had the paint beat off of it. If the paint's been beat off of it, that trolling motor has a lot of hours on it, and you may want to use that as some negotiation because it may have issues in the near future, or it may not even last very long. So you may be looking at getting a replacement. Some other things, shallow water anchors, like talons and power poles and that kind of thing. You want to make sure that those work as well because, hey, they're part of the package price. You want to make sure they work. Fish finders and things like that, hydro waves, make sure those are functional. Radio, if that's in a package somewhere, make sure all those little things work, and if they don't, use them to negotiate the price down. This is where I use the most comfort zone stuff to negotiate the price down. Say the fish finder is so old and you don't even feel comfortable using it, just use that as like, hey, I don't even count that as part of the price here. This thing is so old and so outdated. There's such new technology out there. I'd be good looking to replace it as soon as I purchase the boat. Let's knock off a few $100 because of it. The last thing you might want to check is some of the necessities that you need. Make sure the live well works, the pumps, the pump out, that kind of thing, the bilge, and even the lights. The anchor and nav light, make sure those both work. If they don't, hey, use those to negotiate the price down a little bit. And if you can't get it out of the water, just make sure you can hear the pumps work. That typically means they're in good shape. If not, they're typically not that bad to replace. Okay, so as we keep moving through this, the more likely you're going to make a deal. So the last part of this guy is the trailer. You got to get this guy home, so you might want to look at the trailer and see what kind of condition it's in. So one of the things I like to look at is the grease caps. I like to pop them off real quick and see what the grease looks like. If it's got water or looks milky like the gear lube or something like that does, when it gets water in it, hey, you have issues with a seal and you're going to have to do some work on that eventually, and hopefully it'll get you home, but you don't have any promises there. Check the tires. Make sure the tires have plenty of tread. Make sure they're not cracked or what people may call dry rot. Just make sure they're in pretty decent condition. You want to hook up the lights. Back up somebody's truck to it, yours, his. Make sure all the lights work. I didn't do this when I purchased my boat and I didn't have any lights. I ended up having to rewire it. Make sure you check that, and you could use that to knock the price down a little bit, even if it's just as simple as a bulb, but as bad as a rewire. The last thing you want to check out on the trailer is potentially, large rust spots, any weakness that could be in the trailer as well, cracks in the welds, any cross members that are missing. It's kind of hard to check the bunk boards without taking it out to the water, but if you do get the chance to take it out to the water, the owner will typically let you pull the truck out. So that's the perfect time for you to check out the bunk boards and give you a good inspection of the trailer. Just a good opportunity at that point. He's going to be out there trying to make sure everything's working for you and all that kind of stuff. And that gives you a few extra moments to check out the trailer and see how things are going there. Dead batteries is something you're definitely going to run across when you're looking at boats, especially for those boats that weren't run that year. There's some risk and there's some reward. The reward is that you're going to be able to negotiate a little bit more off that boat because of that battery is dead and you weren't able to check everything. The risk is that you're going to have to trust the owner that those items work, such as fish finders or something like that. More than likely, all those electronics are going to work. My particular case is the trolling motor battery was dead and I was able to negotiate $500 off because I didn't get the chance to test and run the trolling motor. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. I'll definitely teach you how to catch more fish. Have you ever purchased a used boat What was your experience? Let us know in the comments below. We're all here to learn together, so make sure you share your story. But like always, until next time, get out there and go catch you some fish.